you're listening to Sustainably Geeky, the podcast for the everyday environmentalist. And as a reminder, we are on Buy Me a Coffee. So if you'd like to support the show, you can search for Sustainably Geeky there. Today's guest is Todd Medema, and he works in the field of clean energy technology and is the author of the new book, How to Surf a Hurricane. I got a chance to read the book before it was put out. So thank you, Todd, for sending that over. It was very interesting and have a lot of interesting questions and thoughts that came out of that. So first of all, I want to talk about the book, but let's talk about your sustainability journey and why or how you came to work in this field.
Sounds good. And thank you so much for having me on, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Uh, I'd say my journey actually started when I was a kid. I was very involved in Boy Scouts. We did lots of hiking and camping. And so I really got some hands-on experience with nature that as I became an adult, I really came to appreciate of this is something that I want to pass on to my kids and to future generations. Uh, so I kind of entered the workforce from the realm of technology, taught myself software engineering, and had been working in these other industries, advertising and self-driving cars, and just found myself lacking a sense of fulfillment. They kind of felt like more like pointless capitalist exercises in making money. I was like, I want to do something that matters. And so I started really volunteering on the side, trying to make my own lifestyle changes, lobbying senators, running local green clubs. Uh, and one day just kind of woke up with like, wait, I spend 8 hours a day working. Why don't I spend those 8 hours a day working on a thing that I care about? So I made a pretty big career shift into clean energy, working on battery energy storage, and now in solar panels. But even working in it full time, I'm still trying to find new ways to push that sustainability side forward.
Wow, I hear a lot of similarities to my own journey in that, I was a scout, Girl Scout, and I kind of blame that for a lot of my obsession with nature and the outdoors. And then, like you, started out volunteering and thinking, why am I not doing this full time? Because this is what I love. So, haven't gotten to the point where I want to write a book just yet, but who knows? Maybe that'll come.
There's a lot of ways to
So
help.
yeah, the book. Yeah. Well, I am interested in hearing about how you came to write this book. It's called How to Surf a Hurricane, which is an interesting title in itself. And it's set in the near future, and it features an unlikely group brought together to retrieve prototype batteries that could change the future of clean energy. So I'm hearing a lot of similar themes to your own life and your own experiences in that. And your website describes it as a heist thriller showing that stories about climate change and adaptation can be fun and hopeful. So tell us more about the story as much as you're comfortable sharing, and then your inspiration for writing it.
Yeah. So the inspiration for this story was really uh, a few years ago. I was thinking, how can I have an impact in the sustainability space? And a friend sent me an article about how we as humans are story-oriented creatures. We remember a good story far more than a statistic. And I just looked at that and I was like, wow, like the environmental movement's kind of doing it wrong. We throw figures about like megatons of carbon and like projections for climate futures, but it's like it's all numbers. And I've been having this feeling that the environmental movement was kind of stalling in terms of the audience that it was resonating with. Uh, and so I was like, well, maybe there is something there. Maybe we do need more climate stories as an actual meaningful way to advance environmentalism. And like a week later, completely unrelated, a different friend sent me uh, the three archetypes or stereotypes of climate storytelling, which is these three stories that we keep repeating itself. It's either the tech genius will save us, or the kids will save us, or the future will be a dystopian hellscape that like we deserve. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. Most climate related stories really seem to fit in that. But what those stereotypes mean is it really only the each of those stereotypes appeal to a certain group of people, and so if we're only telling those stories, like we really wall ourselves off. And I was like, well, what would a totally different type of story about the environment be like? And it's like, I've never read a climate heist. I love heists and thrillers myself, so like let's try it. Maybe we'll bring some people into movement, help some people understand about climate who would not have traditionally considered themselves an environmentalist.
Yeah, you really do hear all the time now that it's all about storytelling, right? Like we can preach all day and try to scare people into taking action, and sometimes that works. But ultimately, like if you really want to reach the masses, you need to tell a story and humanize it, and make it interesting too, I guess. Unfortunately, which
Yeah,
is what
I
stories
mean,
like
it's
this
not.
do.
I wouldn't say unfortunately. It's like uh, having scaring people into action is not a great way to get people to act. I was just reading the book Nonviolent Communication, completely unrelated to environmentalism, but fantastic book. And one of the questions that the author posits is like, uh, if you want someone to change their behavior, the first question you might ask is like, how do I get them to change their behavior? And if you just ask that question, force and pressure and manipulation and guilt tripping totally work. Like they'll change their behavior. But you have to ask the second question of why do you want them to change their behavior? And then you realize, like, hey, actually, I want them to change their behavior because I want them to care about the environment. And that's a totally different way of talking to people than just this, like, you should do it because it's like the right thing to do.
Hmm. Being set in the near future, the story featured some new technology, but the world was mostly recognizable, very similar to today's world. I think it was set in, was it 15 to 20 years in the future or so? Might be a
Yeah,
little farther.
2040.
Yeah. So there were some things you mentioned that I was like, oh, that's different, that's new. But otherwise, I think it's not like when we watch Back to the Future, they thought 2015 we'd have flying cars. um, but I am curious as to, what current technological advances you're seeing that maybe inspired what you had in the book, and maybe that will transform the way we live and may potentially help to solve some of the environmental problems that we're trying to fix. So what I guess is based on fact and what is maybe a little more fictional of what you wrote.
Yeah. So placing it in the near future was very intentional on my part. That was one of the things that I wanted to do with the book is tell a story of how our generations are going to have to confront climate change. Because a lot of climate fiction is, in 100, 200 years, everything will be underwater. And like, it's like, so what? I'll be dead in 100 years. Like, tell me a story about my life. Um, and with that lens in mind of like, hey, this is taking place in 15 years, I really tried to make it as factually accurate as possible. I work in the clean energy field, so I was basing this off my industry experience. And then anywhere where I kind of went out of my realm of experience, I tried to consult experts and understand what would be feasible and plausible. Um, I think one of the biggest technology aspects here is just electrification. That's to me one of the biggest ways that we're going to make progress in climate, and also one of the clearest ways that technology is proven and advancing. Because there's a lot of technologies out there where it's like, well, yes, if nuclear fusion ever works, it'll be fantastic, but it's not working yet. And to go from that moment of like it works in the lab to it works at scale, 10, 20, 30 years of time. So like
Okay.
really this go ahead.
I was just going to say, can you explain what electrification is for our listeners who maybe have heard it, but like are like, I don't know, everything runs on electricity. So what do you mean by that when you say that?
Yeah. So not everything runs on electricity. There's actually a lot in our world that doesn't. And in fact, our electricity often comes from fossil fuel sources as well. So electrification is this larger idea of converting things like natural gas cooking stoves or gas powered cars, or even aviation fuel powered airplanes to run on clean electricity and batteries that are powered by clean sources like solar and wind.
Okay, yeah, and I know, like especially in the U.S., there was a big push in the IRA to get a lot of incentives for electrifying appliances and other things, like you mentioned. But who knows where that'll go at this point? But hopefully, that'll still be the general trend around the world into the near future. So sorry, I cut you
and
off. You go ahead.
oh, and I think so, right? Because when you look at the trend with the technology, it's very quickly becoming the cheapest, best option, regardless of subsidies. Like it used to be 10 years ago that solar panels is kind of like, okay, you get the subsidies and like it's still kind of expensive, but you're doing the right thing. But like now, solar power is the cheapest form of electricity. And we see that play out in markets, right? Like the vast majority of new electricity installed in the US is solar because it's the cheapest, like even without subsidies. And so we're seeing that same trend in all other forms of electrification as well.
Yeah, and the cost of it has dropped. I think I was reading recently like 99% since it was developed, which is insane to think how quickly it's fallen and becoming so affordable. So uh, the economics is definitely on our side. I've said this in previous shows, like we're lucky that it's not only the right thing to do for a lot of different reasons, but that ultimately, that might be the thing that saves us is that it's the best thing, the best investment money wise.
Exactly.
um, so sorry, I think I cut you off. You were talking about any other technological advances that may have inspired the book or that you included. Specifically, I'm curious about the batteries because these batteries that he's heisting, that he's going after, are supposed to be these miracle batteries that can do all this stuff. But I don't know the technology behind it, so I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, so lithium sulfur, it's just a new type of battery chemistry, and we are as the human species are developing new types of battery chemistries all the time. Lithium sulfur in particular is one that has kind of sat on the research shelf for a long time, where people have pointed to it and been like, if we can get this to work, it'll be it'll perform amazingly, uh, way better than our current battery technology, but it has these really profound, difficult technical problems that we just can't seem to crack. And so, the batteries that they're stealing in How to Surf a Hurricane are, someone finally cracked the code on this particular battery chemistry.
Okay, and yeah, batteries are, I think, one of the things that's maybe, don't know if I want to say holding back a lot of clean energy, but that are kind of a roadblock because like the sun doesn't shine all the time, the wind doesn't always blow, so we need the batteries to store the energy when peak production is happening, so that at night or whenever we can use it and not just not have electricity. That is the one thing that fossil fuels can say is we can consistently provide all the time with no breaks or anything. So if we can get the battery thing figured out, I think it'd be a huge win.
Exactly. And, I used to work in battery storage for 4 years, and the chemistries that we have today are already quite good. The electric cars that we produce in many ways are simply superior to gas cars. We build these large scale energy storage battery installations for utility companies like PG&E that are hundreds of megawatts, that they can really profoundly stabilize the grid. Uh, but there are still use cases where the existing battery chemistries aren't sufficient. And like one of the big ones is in aviation. Like today's batteries are just too heavy to put in a long distance plane. There's some really cool like short distance planes coming out, but it's going to be a very long time before you could fly from like San Francisco to London on batteries. So the batteries we have today are going to help us go a long way towards electrification, but there's still room for improvement.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's cool anyways to think about the possibilities of technology that's being developed today, because this is set in the near future. It seems, it seems fantastical, but also doable because we're like, oh yeah, I remember hearing about that breakthrough or that thing that we were working on, and now it's come to pass. And a lot of the stuff we have today started out as a pipe dream for a lot of people. So
Exactly.
um, it'll be interesting to see where we go in the future. Uh, so one message that stood out for me from the book was that there isn't just one way to try to make systemic change happen, but rather it's going to take several types of actions, including protests, courts, elections, etc. So were there specific people or actions that inspired you? Because you saw a lot of that throughout the story, those different types of actions.
Yeah. The I'd say the single moment that really defined that mentality for me was I was volunteering for Citizens Climate Lobby, which is an amazing volunteer group. Like if you aren't sure what to do, what you can do about climate, like check them out as a great volunteering group. But uh, one of the people there had this phrase the solution to climate is not a silver bullet, it's silver buckshot. And that's just always stuck with me.
Yeah, a lot of times we just want instant action, and unfortunately, in any social movement, it's never been the case. We just see sometimes one step forward, two steps back, or two steps forward, three steps back. But if you look at the long arc of history, they say progress is definitely upwards. It just sometimes isn't. You can't see it in the moment, I guess. And it's nice to have that reminder, I guess, from other people who have been doing it long term or who have been studying these trends and kind of say, actually, we did make progress if you look back at this, this, and this.
Yeah, and that was something that brought me
Let's
a lot of
see. This
hope.
kind of.
It's something that I kind of go back to uh,
Mhm.
when writing the book was the past successes we've had as a species for the environmental
Mm.
movement. There was a huge acid rain problem in the 1900s.
Mm.
It's solved. We regulated those pollutants. The hole in the ozone, that was like a huge
Mhm.
thing. And like when I was a kid, and we solved that by regulating CFCs. So like
Yeah.
we can do this.
Yeah, the rivers aren't on fire anymore, and you can see the sky. There's not smog yet in a lot of cities that used to be completely. Yeah, it's amazing. Like people forget collective action does work. Like we came together as a species to fix the ozone layer, and I just don't understand, why there's such a resistance now. Well, I do, but it's just
I think
frustrating.
cli- climate change, I think, is part of the reason it's harder is it's more abstract. You
Yeah.
know, like smog, if you wake up in the morning, you're like, wow, the air smells terrible and looks terrible. Like, I want to do something about this. But climate change is more of a nebulous long term thing. Like, yeah, in like 20, 30 years, this will suck. And so
Mm.
it's harder to motivate people. But I think now that we're seeing more and more extreme weather events and really able to associate like this is climate change played a role in making this hurricane or this wildfire more extreme. We're starting to reach that inflection point where like a lot of people are being personally affected by it and starting to care.
Yeah, and I guess too with climate change, it's like there's so many inputs causing it, right? It's not just we're releasing CFCs into the air and this one way and we have to stop. Okay, we can cut that out. But with climate change, it's like we have to change the way we travel, the way we use energy to heat our homes and light our homes and buildings, what we eat. Like every facet of our life has to change in some way, and change is hard. And you're asking people to completely overhaul their entire existence, basically. And it's a
Yeah.
lot. So it's important to remember that perspective, I guess. So this kind of goes back to your point earlier about the different themes that you see come up in climate type novels. But the more that I read in the cli-fi genre, the more I notice there is a little bit of a shift from more of a dystopian to a utopian stories. So in other words, from more of the hopeless to the hopeful. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this, and if you've noticed this, or if it's just maybe me being, too hopeful myself.
No, I've noticed this as well, and I think part of it is I'm surrounding myself with people who are focused on the hopeful side, so I'm just more exposed to these stories of hope. Uh, and I think it's actually incredibly important that we tell these stories of hope because the stories that we tell ourselves are inform what we think is possible in the future. And what we think is possible in the future informs the actions we take today. So if we're constantly telling ourselves the stories of like, you know, the robots are going to take over, the earth is going to turn into a boiling pollution bowl, then we're kind of like not going to care. It's like, what can we possibly do if that's going to be what's happened? But if we start telling ourselves these stories of it is possible to make change, here's a story of someone like you who made a change, who helped improve things and it actually turned out better for what they did, then we're going to start picturing ourselves as someone who can make that positive change and build a future that we want to see. And I think that's so critical.
Yeah, I think so too. And I don't know, I find myself just enjoying those stories more too, like as a reader, because real life is already stressful enough, and then you're going to go and read a story that's also stressing you out because all these bad things happening. So I'd rather have kind of a happy ending. Maybe that's not realistic, but in my fiction or my, fun time, I want to just be able to enjoy it.
I think I've seen two types of climate fiction that tell stories of hope, right? There's the more of like the Becky Chambers, like cozy climate fi that's like hundreds, thousands of years in the future, where it's like humans have figured out a new way to live, and that's very inspiring. And there's the other side, which is what does it look like today? What does it look like in our lifetimes? And it's, maybe not as cozy because the world's a messy place, but I think it's also really important and valuable and even can be enjoyable to see these kind of messy middle stories.
Yeah, that's true. We got to kind of take a look at everything and not just inundate ourselves with one specific type. Um, so this is your first novel, correct?
It
Well,
is.
congratulations, because it's a big feat. Like, I've never tried to write a book, but just writing my dissertation for school was enough, and I can only imagine what it's like creating an entire story around, out of nothing, basically, just your own head. So, um, I didn't prepare you for this, but is there anything you'd want to share with people about the writing process, or your, I don't know, lessons learned, or just kind of your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, it was really a wonderful experience. Certainly a lot of work. It's going to be about 2 years end to end. I thought it would be 6 months, so ever the optimist. Um, but I really started writing the story for myself. Of just I want to think about what the future could be, and so I started just writing these little vignettes of like, what would that be like? How would this person react? Like, oh, now how would these two people interact with their own adaptation things going on? And eventually I was like, whoa, I think I actually have something here. I should like talk with a professional. And but yeah, for me, it really just started as this almost experimental place to ponder the future. So I would encourage people to write or do art or whatever form you find joy in, that experimentation and self-expression. And it certainly doesn't have to get published, but just doing it for yourself, I think, is wonderful and healing.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like, a lot of people never try things that they might enjoy or be good at or not. I don't know, just because they think I'm not going to be good at it or it's not going to be well received. But a lot of times the point is just doing. Like, you don't have to be a Picasso to paint, or a great singer or whatever. Like, you don't have to go and make an album, but if you enjoy singing, then sing. Go do karaoke or do it in your shower or whatever. But like, create. You don't have to create for others. Just doing it for yourself is the process. And I've had to kind of relearn that as I get older and life takes over, and you just think, oh, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to listen to music or go to this show or that. But in the end, when I do it, I feel so much better. So,
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught in this capitalist mindset that like everything we do
mm,
must provide economic value.
yes.
uh, Guilty as charged.
Yes,
uh,
same. Oh my God.
but it really doesn't.
Hmm.
And I think it's actually super important to take that time of like, I'm intentionally producing something right now that has no like economic value, just for fun, just for myself, because it's such a different mindset, and it really opens up these possibilities like, hey, maybe in other places in life, you know maybe I don't have to think about everything in terms of dollar values and seconds saved. uh, and that almost like rebellious mindset in this world of late stage capitalism is one of the many ways that we can help make a better future.
Yeah, definitely small rebellions of just not monetizing your time and thoughts and whatever, just like doing things because you want to, you enjoy them. They don't have to give anyone value. Well, we've talked about a lot in this talk. Is there anything else you'd like to share that maybe we haven't touched on, or resources you would share with folks who want to learn more about something we've discussed?
Yeah. So if readers are interested in taking more action, I've actually set up a page on the book's website specifically for listeners here. So if you go to howtosurfahurricane.com/geeky, lowercase, uh, I've prepared a little guide on some suggested ways to take action, and also a exclusive sneak peek of the first 3 chapters of the book.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Yeah, we'll link to that in the show notes for anyone that wants to check that out. Um, well, I guess we will move on now to our green life hack portion of the show. This is where we share something that you can do as an individual to live a little bit more sustainably, just one action each, so that you're not overwhelmed, but you can still, try something out to make a difference. So, Todd, do you want to start us out?
Yeah, I would say for one thing that you can do, this is going to seem kind of meta, but I think it's actually super important, is to practice gratefulness. Because I was just reading The Serviceberry, a great book on reciprocity and gift giving in nature, and she had this great line that gratefulness is the antidote to hyper consumers capitalism. To just take a moment and be like, I have enough. I don't
Mm,
need more. And in fact, I have enough that I can share with other people, and just start from there and see where it takes you.
I love that. That's Robin Wall Kimmerer's new book, right? The
The
Service
service
Berry.
berry, yeah.
Yeah, I read Braiding Sweetgrass and just loved it. So I can't wait to read that one because she has such a beautiful way of saying things. And that is a beautiful sentiment as well. It kind of goes with what you said earlier, like rebel against capitalism by just not engaging and doing things for yourself. So I like the
Exactly.
theme here. My green life hack is a little I guess on theme with what we're talking about today, and it's not quite as profound, but it's just to use reusable batteries when you can. So like even AA batteries and the smaller ones that you use for your devices, they come reusable. I have one actually charging now that you can charge it with as a USB and plug it in, to those things, and then pops that on. So you can find reusable batteries, just about anywhere. You don't have to get the ones that only use once and throw away. And don't throw them away. Recycle them. Even in the States, there are places that will take batteries to recycle. Do not throw them in the trash. I think it's mandatory in Europe that you recycle them, but like in the States, kind of suggested. But yeah, those are not good to go in the landfill. So I guess that's a bonus hack for you. Reusable, rechargeable batteries and recycling batteries. Well, Todd, where can folks find you and or the book? And yeah, go ahead and tell us all the things about when it's coming out and where it'll be.
Yeah, so How to Surf a Hurricane is launching on August 2nd. Pre-orders are available now. So if you go to howtosurfahurricane.com, there will be links to all the places that you can pre-order it and purchase it as soon as it's available.
Perfect. And of course, try to support your local bookshops or retailers and all that good stuff if you can. And are you on social media or the book or anything else that you're
Yeah, so
comfortable
I'm on
sharing?
social media, so you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, uh, Mastodon as just Todd Medema, and there are links to my profiles on the book's website as well.
Perfect. So if folks have questions about it or want to reach out or anything, that's where they can find you. You can find the show on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, anywhere you listen to podcasts. And you can find me on Instagram, and it's pretty much it now because I am off of that other platform at Het's Gonna Be Me. And then if you're so inclined, please support us on buymeacoffee.com/sustainablygeeky. Todd, thanks for reaching out and telling us about your book. I'm really excited for folks to get the chance to read it and learn more about this universe. And I see that it's book one of maybe more, or is that you're still not sure about
I
where it'll
I
go?
am starting to work on a second book. Uh,
Okay.
there's so many stories that I want to tell about this
Hmm.
that uh, it was honestly hard to fit it in one book,
Yeah.
especially trying to keep with the fast-paced heist thriller format. So,
Hmm.
no dates yet because it's a
Yeah.
hard process that apparently takes much longer than I expect. But I am
Cool.
starting to think of the second one.
Okay. Well, no pressure. I just thought I'd ask because it's always good to have that to look forward to, and definitely understand about writing taking longer than you anticipated. So Keep up the good work. And again, thanks for being on the show. And for everyone listening, have a great rest of your day.